Today is Friday, July 31st, 2026. This is Quick Start from CBN News. I'm Dan Andros. An abortion protester wins a big settlement from the government. We'll have that top story and more on today's podcast, where we bring you news from a Christian perspective. Don't forget to subscribe, leave a rating on your podcast platform of choice. We appreciate that. Helps us out greatly. And we're glad you're here with us, getting through the news of the day as we do each and every weekday, bright and early. And joining me now to get through all the news of the day, CBN's Trey Phillips. And on the focus story, Trey, the WNBA just keeps falling all over itself. This time now, one of the team owners gets kicked out over a run-in with some Sophie Cunningham fans.
Yeah, an expletive-laced run-in with some fans that has led her to be suspended now for the next 5 games. So we'll talk about what that would kind of look like here in just a few minutes.
All right, details on that coming up in just a moment. Also, on the main thing, are Iranian operatives slipping into Britain aboard migrant boats? New allegations are raising some serious national security questions. What are the details coming up on the main thing? All right, I want to tell you about our sponsor for this podcast, Christian Solidarity International. For nearly 50 years, they have been rescuing, helping, aiding persecuted Christians in some of the most dangerous places in the entire world. And you just heard on the podcast yesterday about some shocking persecution that's going on in Syria. And it's many areas like this that Christian Solidarity International are active, and they are doing the hard work on the ground. And this is where they need your help to come alongside them, because they're building these relationships. It takes a lot of effort long-term to be there. You get a lot of organizations that are doing good things, they're helping, but sometimes they're not there for the long haul. But CSI is. Nearly 50 years now they've been doing this, and you're talking hundreds of thousands of people impacted and saved and helped and otherwise benefiting from the work that CSI is doing and the help that you are giving them. And if you're feeling that call to help in this way, just go to csi-usa.org/quickstart. Go over to their site. You can read about all the stories and the ways that they're getting involved. They got lots of examples there, and these are just some of the thousands of examples going on where they are intervening and helping persecuted Christians in need. Go to csi-usa.org/quickstart. And Paul Vaughn, a father of 11 from Tennessee, says the Biden Justice Department targeted him over his peaceful pro-life activism. Vaughn was arrested after participating in a protest outside an abortion facility where he says he prayed, sang hymns, and demonstrated peacefully. He was prosecuted under the Freedom of Access to Clinic Entrances, that's the FACE Act, and he was sentenced to 6 months of house arrest. Thomas More Society, which represented Vaughn, argued the FBI's armed early morning raid was excessive and intended to intimidate pro-life advocates. Attorneys say the new financial settlement acknowledges the government's actions went too far, though financial terms were not disclosed. Some reports say it was in the 7-figure range. And First Baptist Church of Hazelhurst partnered with Strength of a Champion Ministries for a Night of Champions event that combined food, games, and sports with a gospel message. And coaches and student athletes from 6 counties gathered for the event, where former NFL quarterback Jake Fromm challenged coaches to recognize the spiritual influences they have on the young people they mentor. Church leaders say the outreach was designed to use athletics as a bridge to share the gospel. Coaches also share personal testimonies and more, encouraging students to put Christ first. You can read more on that great story over at cbnnews.com. Very encouraging story up there right now, and you can read more as well over at cbnnews.com. Trey, wanted to circle back to this FACE Act or settlement that happened here, and we covered the case of Mark Houck very closely, and that was probably the most prominent of these FACE Act prosecutions that the Biden administration underwent. And I'm still wondering, and I would love to see a deeper investigation into how these cases were raised up, who prompted them to get elevated in the way they did, because it was very clearly political, very clearly intentional. And I still think there's unanswered questions as to who actually, To borrow a phrase from a famous movie, who ordered the code red? That's what I want to know, because it sure seems like there's no way that these federal prosecutors would have brought these cases, particularly Mark Houck's, which had zero chance of winning. It was as if they wanted to do, as we said here in that news copy, they wanted to intimidate. There's no other reason for it. Mark Houck said he was going to come in willingly, but they still showed up at his house with all of his kids, guns blazing. I mean, not actually shooting, but they had guns out and they were armed and there were multiple agents. It's ridiculous. It's utterly ridiculous and shameful what happened. And I think America deserves answers to this, because there's just no way that it was a couple of rogue federal prosecutors who decided to make a statement. They just don't do that. And so someone had to call the shot from higher up. I would just love to know who it was.
Yeah, I've never seen, in all of our years of talking about the FACE Act and different ways it's been applied, I've never seen it applied to anyone other than a conservative, particularly when it comes to the pro-life cause. So yeah, it just seems that there's no doubt in my mind with the way that these arrests and these encounters were arranged, the way that they took place, the people who were charged with them, all of it just, to me, smells of an intentional targeting with the goal of a chilling effect on conservatives who are wanting to raise awareness about choosing life over choosing abortion. And also, I mean, who gets that upset over the fact that a baby's life got saved? I still don't understand getting that angry over the fact that a woman going into abortion clinic, might be attracted to a peaceful protester who's holding a sign or saying something to be encouraging to them, and they go over and have a conversation and they decide to walk away from the clinic and not get an abortion, which very often, by the way, leads to all kinds of mental health issues that the women then have to undergo in order to get healing from the process of ending the unborn life that's inside of them. So for the life of me, I just can't figure out why that's so anger inducing for so many people. Now, if you're berating somebody or you're being violent, sure, that's an issue. But I have yet really to cover any story, Dan, where that's widespread. I mean, sure, there's one-offs of people doing things they shouldn't do. But the vast, vast, vast majority of these pro-life protesters who are violating the FACE Act are incredibly peaceful, kind, genteel people who are just out there trying to instill some hope in people.
Well, and I love the fact that we have to have this double standard of the pro-lifers have to be beyond reproach. They can't yell at anyone. They can't get mad. They can't get upset. Meanwhile, on the other side of the foot, you get government officials running to defend protesters on the other side of the aisle who are literally setting cities on fire. Well, they have every right to be angry, so just let them loot the stores and burn stuff down. But meanwhile, it's, wait a minute, the pro-lifers said a bad word? Well, let's send 30 federal agents to their house. I mean, it's ridiculous that, the double standard is so obvious. Where, and of course, as Christians, we expect to hold ourselves to a higher standard. And that's why you generally see them behave in that way. But regardless of, even if they say not nice things or are upset or get in an argument with somebody, none of that justifies federal agents swooping in armed with their guns out and trying to make a show out of, in order to silence and suppress and fear people, intimidate them into not protesting. So it's quite frustrating, but we're still getting answers, and I don't think people are going to be letting this one go. I mean, you can see Trump, the Trump administration, they gave this settlement here, seeing that this wrong wasn't done, that this injustice wasn't done. So we shall see what happens going forward, but clearly a wrong was done, and glad, at least in this case, it got sorted out. All right, we are going to head to the focus story now. And man, the WNBA just keeps going with PR that has nothing to do with basketball. So what happened to the Storm co-owner, and how did Sophie Cunningham end up responding here?
So, Seattle Storm co-owner Celeste Keaton, she was fined and banned from the team's next 5 home games after she allegedly called 2 teenage Sophie Cunningham fans expletive insane during Tuesday's Fever Storm game, according to independent journalist Brandy Cruz, who was with the girls in the arena at the time of the incident. Then Sophie Cunningham responded on her social media, on her X account, saying there's, quote, a safe space and love for everybody. She praised the girls for, quote, standing up for what they believe and called the co-owner's comments truly embarrassing. And Sophie actually even said in her post about everybody's welcome, she said, everybody literally is welcome, male, female, those who identify as transgender women and those who identify as transgender men. She actually didn't say what her perspective was yet again. She just said, if you want to have a conversation, if you want to come to the table and sit with me and talk, I don't care what you believe or who you are, I'll have a conversation with you. And what is insane, Dan, is that is being deemed as just an awful, horrific thing for somebody to say. It's like, well, to me, I think that's actually tolerance. The thing that the left so much loves is tolerance. But I think it just makes it clear that actually tolerance is not what they're after. They don't really care about tolerance, because what Sophie Cunningham is saying she's willing to do is, I'll talk to everybody. That actually is tolerance. But what the left so often wants, especially when it comes to this issue, is what Celeste Keaton was saying. I'm going to shout down the person that disagrees with me, and I want them to be drowned out and silenced completely. But I guess at least in this instance, it's those 2 teenage girls, which, by the way, again, teenagers. This is an adult woman berating teenagers.
And these
teenagers got the last laugh with her being suspended.
I don't know how old they are, but it didn't say in the article I read, but they don't look like 19-year-olds. They look closer to 13-year-olds.
They look young.
Yeah, they look pretty young. So the fact that an adult was so unhinged that they were swearing at these 2 kids, it's just sad. I mean, your echo chamber, you think that's an amazing move to do when you're in your echo chamber online, but then when you try to actually do it in real life, it looks pretty awful. So what exactly did the girls allege happened here at the arena? And what did the team do in this situation? They try to silence them? Did they stand up for them? What did they do?
So the 2 teenagers were wearing XXXY Athletics gear, which is an organization we've talked to the founder of this organization before here on CBN News. They are celebrating and encouraging and endorsing men staying in men's sports and women staying in women's sports. So, very fringe, crazy ideas that this company is endorsing. But the girls were wearing clothing with that branding on it to celebrate Cunningham's stance on women's sports, and they had courtside seats as fans of Cunningham and the WNBA team that she's on. And Cruz said that Storm players allegedly were giving the girls thumbs down gestures, and the girls said Keaton, who was seated near the other co-owner of the team, one of the other co-owners of the team, that Keaton approached and swore at them until one broke down crying at the halftime show. And then Cruz also pushed back on rumors that the arena staff forced the girls to put away their signs, saying they voluntarily set them aside afterward because they felt scared, not because they were told by the team or anybody in the arena that they had to put the signs down. And Keaton argued that the alleged conduct violated the arena's code of conduct. She claimed that the girls holding the signs, not her shouting expletives at teenagers, but the girls silently holding the signs, was a violation of the arena's code of conduct, and that an average fan would have been ejected for the same behavior.
No, I mean, I think as a league struggling to become profitable, I think a great idea is to be uber stringent on the signs that people can bring into the stands. I mean, that just sounds like a genius business move here. But how did the teams and other figures react in the aftermath after this whole thing kind of played out? Everyone saw the clips on social media. What happened after?
Yeah, screaming the F word at kids who are attending your game is also not a great way to bring more people into the stands. But
it's not.
So Jenny Gilder, one of the majority owner, actually one of the other co-owners of the team, she issued an apology saying the team is, quote, committed to creating an inclusive environment where every fan is treated with respect. And the Storm head coach Sonia Raymond, she addressed the pregame rally but avoided the specific allegations, saying the organization coordinated with security to keep the arena welcoming. The Indiana Fever distanced itself entirely from the situation altogether. And neither Cunningham nor Caitlin Clark spoke to reporters directly after the game about the incident. Obviously, Cunningham did eventually post what she posted on X, but the story did draw national attention, with figures like J.K. Rowling, the Harry Potter author, someone we've talked about before, amplifying the girls online, saying that they were heroes. The teenagers were heroes for what they did and for facing the screaming of the co-owner at the game.
Man, this is just really something to watch unfold. And again, I really think there's a different world between online world and real life world. And I think as Christians, we know that the values that we represent, and when we are representing Christ, the biblical values that you read and how to treat people and how to interact, of course, we're not going to do it perfectly, but those are eternal. Those are things that are just universal, essentially. And we all kind of know them deep down to be true, like love your neighbor as yourself, be kind, forgive. These are things that resonate with people. But what we see on certain sections of the online world where they're promoting in their echo chambers these sorts of things, then it comes out into the real life, and then it leaves you yelling at a kid. And you can just see the folly in those worldviews when you're like, well, I guess I'm putting this on a pedestal, these trans rights or whatever, and they believe all the propaganda they're reading online about that. And then they start yelling at kids, and it shows you how silly and how unhinged and how lost so many of these people are. And the fact that the league has owners doing this, I mean, that's pretty bad. It's just pretty bad. And, at least they suspended or banned for a certain amount of games. Hopefully they have some time to reflect on their behavior and can see that that's not, as you were saying, Trey, it's not inclusive and kind of like, well, we're tolerant. Well, except when we see something we disagree with, and then it's all bets are off, and we're just going to yell at everybody, whether swear at kids and stuff like that. So they got their priorities kind of all messed up here.
Yeah, for sure. Look, I think the last thing I'll say on this, and I'm sure there'll be updates and we'll bring them to the CBN audience as they come, but this is what happens when your life is dictated and the driving, motivating force is hatred and anger. I think there's no better way to describe what this woman, it's just an outpouring of what's in her heart. I mean, that's what scripture says, is that out of the abundance of the heart the mouth speaks. And I can't help but think that this must be what this co-owner sits and thinks about and dwells on and is focused on, to the point that, who knows, was she even fully aware of the fact that she was screaming publicly in front of all of these fans at two young teenage girls, one of whom apparently broke down crying. It's like, she's obviously responsible for her actions, but I'm thinking, was she just seeing red and was just so overcome with her anger? But either way, I hope in the time that she has off, that she doesn't just get more angry, but that somebody maybe comes alongside her and says, hey, maybe you should do a little bit of self-reflecting. And it's fine for you to have a different perspective, but this is not how you should be engaging with people who have dignity and value and worth.
Yeah, 100%. And sad that the WNBA, it seems like most of the headlines coming out of there have nothing to do with basketball at all. It always seems to be some sort of cultural issue that's popping out of that league. And, that's probably one of the issues with it. It's like, maybe you guys should just focus on basketball. And again, people can have their own personal views. That's fine. But you're a basketball league. You should probably try to keep things to basketball. But appreciate you bringing us the latest update on that one, Trey. And we're going to head over to the main thing now. And the UK is facing some big concerns now over illegal migration, illegal immigration, and reports that Iran's Islamic regime may be exploiting small boat crossings in the English Channel to move operatives into the country. Raj Nair is joined by Stephen Briggs of Israel Matters to unpack the claims, the evidence, and what it could mean for Britain's security. That's today's main thing.
Is the Islamic Republic of Iran smuggling spies into the UK using migrant boats across the English Channel? Well, Stephen Briggs joins us now. My friend, what can you tell us?
Well, the Telegraph is reporting that Iran-linked networks have used migrant smuggling routes into the UK to move suspected covert operatives into the country. And the report is summarized by Iran International cites unnamed Iranian officials, people smugglers, and analysts, and links the alleged activity to Unit 700 of the IRGC, the Quds Force, a logistics and smuggling arm of the IRGC, which Britain sanctioned in 2024. Now, it's important to be aware of that. So they have already identified these as a terrorist organization. Now, we need to be careful. The most explosive claim that Tehran is directly exploiting channel migrant routes to move operatives into Britain relies heavily on unnamed sources. But the fact they went to press about this means they're pretty concrete in what they're saying. So this should be presented as a serious allegation, not yet a fully proven public intelligence finding. However, the wider threat is already well documented, as British authorities have warned that Iran is a persistent and unpredictable threat. MI5 has tracked more than 20 potentially lethal Iran-backed plots in the UK. UK officials have also said Iranian state agencies, including the IRGC, use proxies and criminal networks to target dissidents, journalists, Jewish communities, and Israelis abroad. So the Telegraph report fits a broader pattern. However, this is not about claiming every migrant is a threat. That would be false and wrong. Many people crossing borders are fleeing danger, poverty, persecution, and war. And Scripture tells us in Leviticus 19:34 to love the stranger as ourselves. But compassion is not the same as naivety.
Well put. For us in the States, it's a pretty simple process of just crossing the border from Mexico. But with the English Channel, tell our American audience how porous is that port of entry, I guess you could say. Like how frequent, how pervasive is the, I guess you could call it, migrant crisis into the UK through the channel?
Well, the English Channel has become a major route for organised immigration crime. If hostile states are able to exploit those same criminal networks, then the border security becomes national security. And we have to remember, this is the English Channel is between England and France. And on a clear day, you can see France from England and vice versa. Romans 13 teaches that government has a God-given duty to restrain evil and protect the innocent. A nation can treat genuine refugees with dignity while also guarding against hostile regimes, smugglers, and terror networks, which is why this story matters. Iran does not operate only through missiles, drones, and proxies in the Middle East. Western governments have accused Tehran of using intimidation, cyber attacks, criminal gangs, and plots inside democratic countries. And we have to what's our source and how do we assess this? Well, the biblical image here is Nehemiah. When Jerusalem was under threat, Nehemiah 4 verse 9 says, "Nevertheless, we made our prayer unto God and set a watch against them day and night. They prayed and they posted a guard." And that, friends, is wisdom. For Christians, the right response is not fear, it's discernment. We've got to pray for refugees. We've got to pray for Iranian Christians. We've got to pray for Jewish communities facing threats. But we also ask leaders, and in this case, the Labour leadership, to protect the innocent and expose the networks that exploit human suffering. This is a Watchman moment. And that Telegraph report should be handled carefully, but the pattern behind it is real. Iran uses proxies, criminal networks, intimidation, and threats abroad. So Britain must now ask whether its borders are prepared for that kind of enemy. Scripture never calls us to panic, but it does call us to watch.
Well, that's exactly it. The difference between panic and intense focus on what's actually happening on your border. I think the question for a lot of folks in the West is, how serious is this plot, right? We hear of Hezbollah training camps in the Western Hemisphere, and it almost seems like, but it never materializes. Iran trying to infiltrate the West, but it does seem kind of obscure. I think you could, obviously argue that the CIA and MI6 and even Israeli intelligence have foiled a lot of these plots, which has the converse reality of making people feel really, really, really safe. But how serious should we take this report?
Well, I think the understanding, we always want things to happen yesterday, is actually that this is not a short-term plan. I mean, we have to remember how much planning went into October 7th. We have to remember how much planning, obviously the rise in 79 of the revolution in Iran, we're seeing the outworking of that with Hamas, Hezbollah, the Houthis. I mean, the list goes on and on of these different proxy locations, and they're seeking to put influence and sway in other nations as well. They've tried to secure a port in Sudan, and and Darfur, when there's upheaval in a nation, they tend to seek to exploit that upheaval. And that really is the important aspect of this, is knowing, okay, what's really going on? How am I watching? How am I seeing what's going on? And this porous border, as you talk about it, is really a reality. This the flooding into the UK of these boats is not a new thing. It's been happening for years, and there is an increasingly intense move of migrants of coming across, and criminal smuggling groups using these routes to bring the potential for major terrorism in the tiny island of the UK.
Well, you know, we've documented at length kind of the gosh, I don't know what the word is, the instability that the UK is kind of bringing on by itself by making some just baffling decisions. So let's be praying for your country. Let's be praying for wisdom for the church in the UK. Is there any final words you might have for us?
Yeah, I think we have to remember the patriarchs of the UK and their prayers for the nation of Britain. You've got to think of Charles Haddon Spurgeon, of George Whitefield, of John and Charles Wesley, of Hudson Taylor. All of these greats of our history and heritage should not be forgotten. J.C. Ryle, Murray McShane, Charles Simeon, to name a few. The list goes on. And these ones were looking to see the good news go out to the nations, and Britain needs to recover that reality. There is good news. It's found in the Bible, and the nation that took the good news to the uttermost parts of the earth needs to recover that vision once again.
All right, Raj, appreciate that there. And I mean, it's very concerning, the mass illegal immigration that's happening. I mean, there was just viral videos you may have seen coming out of Spain where it looked like hundreds, maybe even thousands, just flooding in off the shores. It's crazy. It is crazy what is happening in Europe right now. And so I will certainly be keeping an eye on it and giving you updates as they come in. All right, that's going to leave us with time on the podcast today for one last thing.
Well, after that focus story on Sophie Cunningham, we thought Romans 12:18 would be a good place to go. It says, "If it is possible, as far as it depends on you, live at peace with everyone."
Yeah, if possible. Sometimes that's a tough one, but hey, we got to give it the old college try there. Scripture commands us to, but good thought to leave it on this edition of the Quick Start Podcast. Make sure you're getting on over to cbnnews.com and faithwire.com for more news from a Christian perspective. And if you enjoy hearing news that shares your values, then please consider giving and partnering with CBN at cbnnews.com. God bless. See you back here Monday.